Thank you for tuning in and welcome back, team. Now, whenever it comes to buying a house, we've all heard of the horror stories, right? A number of unpleasant transactional pitfalls. The appraisal came in low, the appraisal didn't come in right, the home inspection was awful, the house was actually collapsing, everything else, right? Anything underneath the sun, we have probably heard from friends and families, or maybe even been part of those frightening occurrences. But perhaps nothing is more scary than finding out if you're buying a stigmatized home. My name is Andrew Finney, your real estate geek. If you need help finding a top agent where you live, or if you simply want to drop me a line to say hello, my contact info is below. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel now and like this video. For reference, I upload 6 days a week. Be sure to tap the bell icon and get notified of the very next one. Okay, team, so let's talk about this now. We're talking about, scary buying a house, right? Is it haunted? Is it not haunted? Just for reference, whenever I was talking about a stigmatized property, let's go ahead and define what is a stigmatized property. Now, home where paranormal activity, suicide, murder, cult activity, famous adulteries, or other misfortunes and crimes that have taken place could be categorized as a stigmatized property. So it's important to know that in real estate terms that a stigma refers to an intangible attribute of a property that may prompt a psychological or emotional response on the part of a potential buyer. So in addition to any physical defects, a house may have unusual features or a history that could possibly negatively impact its value. So it's kind of interesting when we start talking about stigmatized properties, and there's different laws and different disclosures that are required in different states. So whenever we're taking a look at, is your new home a haunted house? How to find out if your future house is haunted, right? Then we're going to outline, we already identified number one, what is a stigma, and broke it down for you. Now the second one is understanding what disclosures are required so that it doesn't come back to haunt you. So here's a pretty scary fact, and a lot of people are pretty shocked here in Las Vegas, Nevada whenever I tell them this or I share this with them and they ask me about a property's history, right? A listing agent may not be required to disclose a stigma on a property unless it's a required state disclosure. Have you ever heard of the phrase that's called caveat emptor, right? It's kind of a scary term in itself. Caveat emptor, right? What caveat emptor means is buyer beware. So in the past, sellers weren't exactly required to disclose anything about homes they were selling, but over the years, a lot of states have adopted and made changes to that rule that now require sellers disclose that information so that the buyers are made aware of certain issues before they sign the dotted line on moving forward with that home. So you have to, agents alike, agents and sellers, all and buyers have to engage in fair and honest dealing with all principles in a real estate transaction. That being said, some laws deregulate the disclosure of sketchy events, and they vary from state to state. In some states, it explicitly relieves the salesperson or brokers involved of the obligation to disclose certain property stigmas, like the case in Nevada. Guess what? If somebody died in the house, it's not a state required disclosure, and we as agents may not even know about it unless a neighbor says something, unless the owner said something, or we have knowledge of that house and the situation. Maybe it's a house around the corner from where the actual agent lives themselves. So it's kind of interesting, kind of scary all at the same time. But now if you have a meth house and someone's breaking bad in that house here in Las Vegas, Nevada, well, if it's a meth house, they're breaking bad, we got to tell you, and we got to know about that up front. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about any information that might get volunteered to you, such as a felony, a suicide, a homicide that has occurred at home. So if your agent, your buyer agent, you want to ask them if you're concerned about any of the things in the house. Maybe you got like a weird vibe when you walked in, but otherwise you love the house. You could ask your buyer agent to ask the seller's agent directly, and they must actually answer truthfully to the best of their knowledge if they know. So that last sentence there is very, very critical to whether the selling agent, the listing agent, right? If they actually know, then they must disclose what they know, okay? So like take into account like California, for example. California has extremely stringent real estate laws, which in addition to a lot of other disclosures that they require, they mandate that buyers be informed of any deaths that have occurred on that property, in or on that property within the last 3 years. So if the house is 50 years old, well, and somebody died on it in year number 2 of that house 50 years ago, 48 years ago, right? Then it's not a disclosable thing. But if it happened in the last 3 years in California, then it is a disclosable thing. So different states have different rules. It's important for you to talk to your buyer agent and know what rules are in place and what disclosures have to be made. And again, if you're concerned with any of this haunted activity, then you might want to go ahead and ask your agent to verify that information with the listing agent. So the third point of today's episode is, before you fall in love, do some research on that house. Since you're unlikely to find the descriptors haunted or former crime scene or CSI in progress, right? And a property's listing detail sheet is not exactly a good way to entice a buyer or attract a buyer to come into the property and take a view. If it says, guess what? Homicide investigation underway, you're probably not going to see that in a Zillow listing description or a real estate listing description, right? So then there's 6 things that you can actually do. The first one is that you can go in with open eyes about the disclosures. That's where we were talking about getting with your buyer agent and understanding what are the required disclosures. If you wanted to take it a step further, there's a website I'll put in the show more description below called nolo.com. That's NOLO.com. And essentially what NOLO is, it's a website with attorneys that have summarized different laws in a select few states. Maybe your state's one of them, maybe it's not. If you don't see your state, maybe you want to contact the folks over at NOLO and ask them to help you know. So you NOLO, now you know, right? So NOLO.com. The second one is ask. Always ask. I mean, it's pretty simple to know specifically what you're concerned about a property. Ask your buyer agent, get in touch with that listing agent, and let you know if there's been criminal, paranormal activity, or if it was a meth house, if someone, again, was Breaking Bad, right? Breaking Bad at that house, you need to know that kind of stuff, right? So sellers and their agents are legally obligated to actually reveal problems if they are aware of them and if and when they are asked. Notice those words keep coming up here, those little prepositions, if and when. So if the question is asked, then or if they know something has happened to that property, they must answer it truthfully when asked. Think about that. The third thing is that you want to carefully review the seller's property disclosures. You want to review everything in its entirety, and part of the things that you're going to be getting when you open up escrow and go into the closing process is what's called a seller's real property disclosure. Review it carefully. Actually read through it. Now, your buyer agent will probably be reading through it with you, or at least ways reviewing it and then contacting you with what they found, if anything in it, and asking you if you had any additional questions and answering your questions. If the property owners are, let's say, forced to put their real estate disclosures into writing, I mean, everybody's forced to put their real estate disclosures in writing, so at least in many of the United States, make sure that you get everything in writing in a real estate transaction. That sums up that point. The fourth one is get the inside scoop from the neighbors. I've talked about that in other home buying videos. Guess what? Guess who the best source of information always is? The people that live in and around that house. They see it. They see people coming and going. They know what's going on in that community. So before you sign on the dotted line to make that offer, you might want to track down a couple of neighbors that might be walking by and ask them how they love the community. If anything happened with that house, let them know that you're interested in possibly buying it. And simply ask them, what do you know? And see what they say, right? Now, the fifth thing is to always Google the address of the property. You know, if you've been with me for a while, or maybe if this is the first time you watch this video, I Google everything. I'm an avid Google fan, you know, love Googling. So if you're Googling and something hits with that property address, maybe there was something reported in the news once upon a time with that house, then Google's going to know. So Google the address and go ahead and cross-reference, go past the first page of results and keep searching in there and just see what's going on, okay? Now, the sixth thing that you can always do is check with the local police department and ask them what kind of things that they might know about that property or that location. Now, crime mapping can also help you with that. Now, police, if you go to the police department, I don't know, they might charge you money in your area, they may not, but you're going to actually ask them to review the police logs for that specific property to see if there are any occurrences at that property. It's something that you might want to consider doing if you're that concerned over a stigmatized property and wanting peace of mind, right? Those are 6 things that you can do underneath your due diligence and doing some research before you continue to fall in love with that home, okay? So now with the 4th tip of today's episode is, does your future house have skeletons in the closet? Well, here's something pretty interesting. You know, you might learn from a neighbor after you close on the house that maybe a former owner passed away. Maybe someone died peacefully, or maybe someone was hurt. You know, different people are different about this. And from my experience as a trusted real estate advisor, it's 5 of one, 5 of another. I mean, some people really don't care what happened in the house before them because they put their energy into it, and that's where they look at it. It's just a house, it's 4 walls and a roof. That's the way they see it. Other people get very, very concerned about the environment that took place inside of the house. That's why I mentioned earlier on in this video about a vibe. Having gone into thousands of homes now, you might think me crazy, and you might be right. I don't know. But houses have a vibe. It either feels right or it doesn't. And it is oftentimes more than just the rooms and the size and the function of the house. Sometimes it actually has like its own energy. Whenever I've walked into homes, and it's like some of them are very warm, some very inviting, very loving, and others are kind of cold or stagnant or sterile feeling. And out of the thousands of homes I've actually seen, I can tell you I've only been into a handful of homes that when I walked in, I really felt like creepiness on my backside, thinking somebody was watching me, and when I turned around, nobody was there. But it was one of those hair-raising experiences for me, and I think the clients I was with also experienced the same thing, because we all kind of looked at each other funny at the same time, went, something's in here. And then we quickly left, having said that, and found them a different house, right? But now there's another site underneath this fourth tip that you can go to. It's called diedinhouse.com. Diedinhouse.com. It's in the show notes description below. You can actually order reports, see what the activity or reported deaths were with that property, and learn more about that property to see if it's the right property for you, and double check if the skeletons in the closet are right for you or not. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to tell me what the most impactful point of this episode is for you in the comment section below. And tell us if you've had any experience buying a haunted house and how you overcame it and what you decided to do. Tell us about it in the comment section below. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop up my contact information. If you want to drop me a line to say hi, or if you simply need help finding a top agent where you live, please let me know. Always love to hear from you. If you haven't already done so, I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. Number 1, please subscribe to this channel. And number 2, please like this video. Number 3, please share this video around with someone you know is going to be able to help, because just like you, I'm sure you could think of just one other person you know that would like to know if the new house that they want is haunted or not. Thank you so much. In between now and next time, I'm wishing you and yours a lifetime full of love, wealth, abundance, and happiness. Thank you for watching today, team, and enjoy an amazing day.